So the next one, we'll talk about managing compensation on a global scale. Guiding question would be, what factors should be considered for a global compensation system? Because multinational corporations, they employ people in various countries. How should they compensate individuals, employees, managers in different countries and according also to different ranks, and on what basis? We talked about performance management last week, yesterday, and today we'll talk also how that then eventually results in compensation. So there we could say 6 functions or objectives of a compensation strategy. First, why do companies pay? It's very simple, because to attract employees and job candidates and also retain employees then. And Ronaldo is thinking of going to Saudi Arabia. Is it because he likes the environment so much? No, it's very simple, because of money, compensation. Compensation can serve as a means to attract employees, attract football superstars, but can also attract IT professionals. People say also it helps to retain employees. But that's very often not the only reason why people leave. There are other reasons that are often more important why employees leave a company. But certainly it helps, and also very often whenever an employee mentions his or her intention to leave the company, a typical response of the company would be, let's negotiate, let's renegotiate. And then maybe they can try to offer a counter offer, a higher salary or other benefits, and then maybe they can retain employees. Second point would be also facilitate transfer between foreign operations and home country, host country, and foreign units. There should be some kind of system behind. Because the idea is, first of all, you can try to motivate people to relocate from one country to the other by offering a higher salary. And at the same time also, we talk, I think that's maybe more the next point, is also to have some kind of equity. If you have a multinational corporation in different countries and you have employees employed in different countries, there needs to be some kind of fairness level. In very simple terms, if you then send one employee from Germany to an African country, and then there's lots of pay disparity, because in Africa the level of pay is much lower, in Germany it's higher, and then maybe even in some cases the expat and the local, the host country national, they do the same job. Or it could be even more extreme. You have a senior manager in the host country and a subordinate, but the subordinate would earn higher salary because it's tied to the salary level in Germany. So developing country context, but also different markets. And it's important to find some kind of balance, a mix that is perceived as fair by the people who relocate and also the people who stay and who are the so-called host country nationals. A fourth point would be also very important, to be competitive. It's also related to first point, attract and retain employees. In order to attract employees, you need to offer compensation a level that is equivalent or better than your competitors in order to attract people. Here I think what would be also important, I mean, of course we have industry difference. I think we talked also, when we talked about different labor markets, there are lots of variation where you set your benchmark, and that's also where many HR companies they offer services. They have a database of salary and job profiles and corresponding compensation levels, and that is then also being offered as a benchmark, because you need to understand to know how much does your competitor pay, so to offer a similar level. And then of course companies can then decide whether they offer market rates, similar to a benchmark, or even higher or below market rates. In particular, as foreign companies in foreign markets, they may not, or they may have a disadvantage. When we talked about recruitment, that foreign companies may not be the preferred employer of choice. Also think about here, in this classroom, we can ask our German classmates if you would like to work for a German company or for a South American company. Yeah, so most of you would think, maybe I prefer a German company. And if you're then a South American, you need to offer a salary premium, yeah, higher compensation. You make up. And if you study finance, it's very simple. It's a risk of return. Higher risk, higher uncertainty, higher pay, higher compensation. So it's important to know your competition and then to pay similar compensation or even higher to attract employees. Another aspect of a global compensation system would be if you have one compensation system that applies to all different countries, then you have a standardized product. It's easier to implement and then to hire and then also to design compensation packages. Sixth point also would be to ensure transparency. That also relates then again also to fairness perceptions. In most cases, companies would ask employees, this is your salary, this is your contract, have a look, are you agree, okay, and this is what you're being paid. And it's confidential. Do not tell anyone else. Right? So many of these contracts include such clauses. Yet then people do talk, yeah, even despite any kind of confidentiality clauses, and then they'll find out, oh, this person earns more than me, she earns less than me, he earns more than me, and so forth, and that leads to all kinds of problems. So already to counter any kind of these reactions, some kind of transparency would be helpful, some kind of bandwidth, what can be expected for certain occupations, and also across subsidiaries and different countries. It may not be the same, but at least some kind of transparency. In some countries, in some organizations, transparency is mandatory. You need to disclose salaries. Yeah, so in Germany and most European countries, you need to disclose the salary of the top managers. You can look it up. You can look it up in the shareholder value report and the annual report, and you can read how much these managers earn and what kind of benefits packages they receive. In the US, if you're working for a public organization, you can just Google the name and whoop, you find the corresponding salary of that person. Yeah, so transparency in some countries, in some circumstances, is mandatory. Yeah, and it's not advocating that companies should disclose all the salaries of all employees, but that has become fairly a practice in many countries, and then it also would make sense to be somewhat transparent, yeah, across the globe. Some other considerations for global compensation systems that is really important to consider when designing compensation strategies for multinational corporations employing people in many different countries. You try to be consistent, somewhat similar practices, transparent, and so forth. But to design really a somewhat fair and transparent system is not always easy. One such problem would be currency exchange rates. So as we know, currency exchange rates fluctuate. Recently, we have seen a huge increase of the US dollar compared to the euro, US dollar compared to the Japanese yen. Swiss franc has appreciated in value, and that can lead to all kind of disparities. So salary that is assumed to be same level across countries now is not anymore. So some American consulting companies or investment banks, they try to have somewhat similar pay levels across countries. They do adjust for purchasing power across countries, but they have a fairly high compensation also compared to other industries and so forth. But then because we have different exchange rates, and then still many people who live abroad and who are relocating or willing to relocate abroad, and they still have also their comparison reference points. So take the example, an Indian IT professional is one is going to Japan and the brother or sister is going to the US. And then they compare their salary in Indian currency, and suddenly the American brother earns 30-40% more than the Japanese one, because of disparate changes in the currency exchange rates, and then that could also result in flows of people, or at least also perceived unfairness, and then that may have some consequences. In simple terms, it is more difficult for Japanese companies to hire now foreigners to Japan, because they would receive much less pay if being paid in Japanese yen, because most companies would pay in local currency. Another point would be inflation rates. Now we have 10% inflation rate in Germany and many European countries. We still have, I think, 2% inflation rate in Switzerland, so much lower. That means also there is some pressure on wages. And we've seen that here in Germany recently. IG Metall, a labor union, they demanded for 8% more salary increase. Right? And then if you're in that industry and you're a large company, and suddenly your cost position will increase. Labor costs will move up very substantially. And then finding some ways how to respond to that. Then we have different local salary levels. I have some charts, I think, very soon. That can be also very attractive for companies to relocate relocate production, servers, and so forth. We talked about that when we talked about global market policies. Because multinational corporations, they're for-profit seeking operations, so they try to reduce costs, and so they can also take advantage of that, particularly at lower levels. Because at lower levels, employees, they're less mobile. They cannot easily relocate to different countries. And that's also how and why multinational corporations take advantage of lower wage levels in different countries. So there is also a difference. We have these highly qualified, highly mobile professions, occupations, such as football players, investment bankers, even university professors and so forth. They can easily relocate, and they can command higher compensation, and there's a lot of competition. But if you work in a factory as a technical worker, you have less opportunities to relocate, and then the power switches from the highly qualified towards the multinational corporation, in also being able to take advantage of lower labor costs across countries. Another aspect that is very important is to consider local government requirements. There's not so much in terms of pay level. There is also some variation in there. So France, a couple of years ago, they introduced a high tax rate for high income individuals. So up to 75% of your income will be taxed. And in Germany also we have progressive tax rates. So the more you earn, the more you have to pay taxes. And the progressive tax rate starts already at a fairly low level. So fairly relatively in relative terms, but if you earn 60,000, 70,000 euros per year, you already have a very high tax rate compared to some other countries, compared with Switzerland. They have much lower tax rate, they have progressive one, but it's much lower curve. So even if you earn a few hundred thousands, you pay relatively low tax rates. Or Middle East, there's no tax, 0% tax rate. So that makes it very attractive to work in the Middle East. First of all, you receive relatively high salaries, and second, you don't pay any tax. So gross and net is more or less the same. So it becomes very lucrative, and if you live a simple life in the Middle East, you have a high salary, you can save a lot of money. But then again, many people who go there, they also spend money. The more money you earn, you spend, but at least you would have the opportunity. Or also, if you work in countries such as Singapore, Hong Kong, Macau, you also have a fairly low tax rate, maybe effectively 10% or less. So there's also very high net income you can accumulate there as an individual. So there are lots of tax differences that have a direct impact on compensation and net payment. And then you have also many other regulatory requirements that add cost to the employer. So the employee may not receive so much more net income, but the cost position will be more expensive for the company. And that applies to most European countries. So in Europe, in Germany, if you take, if an employee earns maybe 100,000 euro net, that would mean he or she would earn maybe 170,000 euro gross. And then the company has to pay extra benefits, and maybe for the company it would cost 250,000 euro to employ that person. So there's a huge discrepancy of the cost an employer has to shoulder and what an employee would receive in his or her pocket eventually. So there are very substantial differences. For a company, all what matters are the cost. Yeah, but for an employee, for individuals who are mobile, have individual agency and so forth, for them it's more important what they receive net into their pocket. But aside these financial aspects, yeah, also there are certain related to that requirements by law, because compensation includes not only cash payments, yeah, or transfer, but also non-financial benefits. One very important one would be healthcare benefits, health insurance. In most European countries, that's taken for granted. It's part of the social system, security system. In many other countries, it's not. And that's also what then companies need to consider into their cost position. And that's also what they offer. We'll talk more about that later. Last point, which I will only briefly mention now, we will discuss more later on, would be cultural preferences. What kind of compensation components are being appreciated, or how important are they, and how programs are being designed? The idea is here, of course, that organizations try to design a compensation system that is attractive to employees, to motivate them, to attract them, and also to retain them. We'll talk about that soon. So here to give you some average salary numbers. Here what we can see is average annual salary by country. As I already mentioned, and you know, there are very substantial differences across countries. In this ranking, very high is Australia. Average annual salary, 83,000 US dollar. And Australia is also interesting because the average salary, also the lower level, and also what you would earn as a secretary and so forth, is fairly high. Also living costs in Australia, if you live in Melbourne or in Sydney and so forth, is rather high. Germany is somewhere in this ranking, in the upper middle part. So on average, Germans earn 49,000 euro, which could be also maybe your starting salary. That would be a typical starting salary for a college graduate in Germany. If you have a really good background and you're very lucky, you may earn 60, 70 or 80,000. But this would be maybe a fairly typical starting salary in Germany. And that's also the average salary, and that includes all people, young and old. That's the interesting part. And US has a slightly higher salary, on average 55,000. UK has a lower average salary, slightly lower. Canada has a lower salary. France has a lower salary. Italy, Austria, also not so different, has also substantially lower average salary, 20% lower. But that also reflects then the industry structure and also the economy of a country. And then, of course, there's no surprise, India, Russia or Brazil, less developed countries, have lower salary levels. And that's also a very common reason why multinational corporations, they go abroad, as they seek lower cost labor in developing countries, such as India, Brazil, or many other countries in Asia, and maybe also in the future more in Africa. Okay, money, money, money. Let's talk more about money. We talked about Ronaldo. We talked about Messi. Now let's switch to the corporate world. Do you have any guess who earned the highest salary last year? It's not Ronaldo and Messi. There are people in the corporate world who earn much more than these guys. And the second question would be also, in which country do CEOs earn the most? Chief executive officers. Okay, so let's look into numbers. But yes, Elon Musk, by far number one, he earned from his many companies he runs 10 billion US dollar. And that's only what he earned from his companies and not investments, because this is also kind of funny. He owns the company, so he receives also share price and dividends. And then he also asks the company to pay me a salary himself. So salary, CEO has different components. One is like a fixed component, a fixed salary. And here what you cannot read here, all these top earning CEOs, they don't earn much fixed salary. So they mostly what they earn is options and stock options. That's how they make a lot of money. And Elon Musk, he's double dipping. because he owns the company, 10%, or depends on whatever company you take, he will receive dividends and also share price increase. And he will ask, please company, I'm the manager, you have to pay me, give me more stocks as a gift because I'm such a great CEO. Yeah? I'm not want to go into this discussion, but anyway, so he's by far number one, American. Number two is Robert Scaringe. Do you know him? He's working for Tesla mostly, and then also Amazon apparently. He's a CEO of that company, and he earned 2.2 billion US dollar in 1 year. Yeah, that's also amazing because he's a manager. As a manager, earning that much of a salary. And then the third one is Tim Cook. Probably you all know him. Here, Apple. Yeah, Apple CEO, and he's a pure manager. So he's not a founder or anything. So he has not much risk. Because Elon Musk, you hate him or love him, I don't know, but at least it's his company. He founded it. So that's something to his credit. And then he's also taking something out of his own pocket. But Tim Cook is not the founder, inventor, or anything. He's simply a manager. So no risk. And receiving 850 million US dollar. That's also amazing. That's America. Then number four, Peter Rawlinson. Do you know him? You know him? No? It's a pity. He is CEO or CTO of Lucid. I think it's a software artificial intelligence company. And he also made 575 million US dollar. Again, American in an American company as a CEO. And then the fifth one, Tom Siebel. And then six, very interesting, a non-American citizen. Also earning a lot of money, 280 million US dollar. But of course, it's an American company. All right, so what we get from this here is, if you really want to earn a lot of money as a CEO, you can do it. It's possible. Most likely you need to join an American company, become CEO of a US company, and then also it's based on stock options, not on a general salary. That also leads to the next point, pay disparity. Pay disparity is very huge in some countries, in particular in the US. If you're a simple factory worker in the US, your pay is very low. Lower than in Germany. In Germany it's more equal pay. Or it's not on this chart here, but where we have relatively equal or same pay regardless of rank would be Japan. So meaning the CEO and the factory worker, the CEO earns more, but not that much more. But in the US it can be 200 or even 500 times the salary that the CEO earns compared to an average worker in the same company. And that's also important to understand that there's a lot of pay discrepancy, and that's also how companies then would need to consider how to pay their entry-level people and upper managers or senior managers. So there's lots of pay discrepancy, not on average only, but also depending on the level. Pay for performance, that's one of the keywords, that also how American CEOs justify their high pay. Because they're being paid because they perform so highly. That's how they say that. And at the same time also it's based on individual contribution. However, that may also be disputed to what extent the CEO can really determine the success of the company. And here we can also distinguish between different reference points. Individual performance rewards, so it will be tied to the individual. At CEO level, so CEO would be then corporate level, but otherwise it would be very often determined by the supervisor, and then there's different criteria. We also talked in terms of performance management about that. We have group performance rewards, and then we have also organization performance rewards. Typically, the higher you move up in the hierarchy of an organization, the more you will be participating in organizational rewards, which is a typical American approach of compensating individuals. Stock options and all these kind of programs were initiated from the US and have been then also transferred to other countries. Particularly those companies that are more Americanized. In Germany, Siemens, for instance, they've also adopted all kinds of organization performance rewards in terms of shareholder value. stock options. In case of German car companies, they also pay a lot of organization performance rewards, but not based on shareholder price, but more often on accounting-based numbers. Yeah, if they have produced more cars, generated more profits, then each individual will receive also a substantial bonus payment, which could be up to 5,000 or 8,000 euro on average per employee. Okay, now last example from football. I think you can guess I enjoy watching football. Here the example of PSG. They have individual performance rewards. It could be if Mbappé scores a goal, he receives an extra payment in addition to his 100 million euros he earns. Or it could also be that a goalkeeper, if he can survive a game without conceiving a goal, would receive an award, or and so forth. Then typically in football teams, if they win a match, they receive an award. Yeah, and then there could be also some other aspects. If more on the organizational level, if the club does very well and so forth, maybe they also get another kickback of the players who play for that team. All right, just one example, because what is even more important in compensation system is not just the payment, the compensation, but different non-financial rewards as well. And even in terms of financial, we can distinguish between direct rewards and indirect rewards. And direct ones would be tied to payment, wage, salaries, bonus, and so forth. Could be also if you work in sales, commissions, and so forth. So these would be really direct, immediate financial rewards, or indirect rewards, what we would typically call benefits. Yeah, and there are some benefits that are mandated by law. Yeah, that could be social security, in health insurance, unemployment insurance, and so forth. That varies substantially across countries. In Germany, we have a very generous insurance, social insurance and benefits included in payment, and also legally that a company needs to provide. So the company makes a payment, as well as individuals get deducted from the salary a certain amount, or it could be also voluntarily. So holidays, there's a mandated minimum number of holidays, but many companies go above and beyond. So Germany, I think we talked about in terms of work-life balance, is really a very attractive location, offering a lot of holidays. I think by law mandated are 26, but most companies offer 30 or even more. And that is very different in other countries, such as Mexico, Japan, Korea, and so forth. Health benefits, so there's lots of variation. And that is being very generously offered in Europe, much less so than in other countries. And then we have all kinds of non-financial rewards. And I think that's also where a lot of expertise and recommendations go into. So we have these financial, direct and indirect rewards, which are important to set some general boundaries, but to offer something to employees. And they say particularly for young generations. Benefits is something taken for granted, but what would be even more important, to offer an exciting job, a challenging job. You receive feedback, you work together with friends, you have a very nice environment, a very good work environment, and these are really conditions that are important and that make a big difference. I think here, it's not even on this here, so it's something related to social environment. Is the company environment friendly? Does the job has a meaning, a purpose? And these kind of aspects, which are non-financial, has become increasingly important, particularly to appeal to young people in industrialized countries, such as Germany and Scandinavia, America, and so forth. Or what we have here at the bottom, flexibility and telecommute, telework, mobile work. These are very demanded benefits in jobs nowadays. And during Corona, I think many witnessed virtual work, mobile working from home. And then now these Corona mandates have been no longer in practice anymore, and people are very reluctant to go back to the office. Yeah, and then some people say, oh no, I don't want to go back to the office. And Elon Musk, again, he was making very provocative statements. He said, everyone has to come back to the office. If you don't come back, you're fired. Yeah, I don't know if he implemented it or not, yeah, but that was making big headlines, and not really considering these aspects. And so I think that's here the point. So many companies, multinational corporations, they're very sophisticated financial reward system, both direct and indirect aspects. And then to varying degrees, they are also now paying attention to non-financial benefits. Okay, let's talk about the influence of culture. Cultural difference across countries. Again, we can think of certain cultural dimensions that are important to consider in this context. In terms of power distance, that's a very important factor that also determines compensation practices. If you have countries with low power distance, such as the US, and that's also one explanation why we have such high payments to these CEOs, because the idea of profit sharing. Yeah, because that's the whole idea behind stock options and so forth. There's kind of profit sharing. That managers, employees who put in the efforts and do well for the company should also benefit from the company's success. So profit sharing. And they may also determine how rewards are being paid out. So they can negotiate, particularly also upper management. So lower management cannot decide. If you join a company, you cannot tell your boss, hey, I want this and that pay, give me this and that. You may negotiate for it, and there's also more negotiation power. But particularly at higher level, they have a large say how to design compensation packages. But even at lower level, there's more room for negotiation. In high power distance countries, in China or Korea, and you're being hired by the company, you cannot negotiate your salary or components. It's take it or leave it. But in America, in Japan, in Germany, there's some room for negotiation. In terms of individualism, I think that's very obvious. If you have individualistic countries, then rewards are very much based on individual performance. Whereas in group-oriented cultures, if, as I already mentioned, performance-based pay have been introduced across many countries, but the emphasis would be then more on group performance, team performance, above maybe single manager-employee performance. And uncertainty avoidance will be also a dimension we talked about, which is also very important for compensation practices. If there's a high uncertainty avoidance in a country, you would make very consistent compensation programs and lots of stability. So you would also try to reduce the importance of pay for performance, performance-based pay. Rather, you have stable performance. In Japan, they have a bonus system where they have a guaranteed bonus system. Also in some other countries, where I think also Brazil is one such example, if a company pays bonuses for 2 years, consecutively, then they have to offer it again the third year again, same amount, because then it becomes not really based on performance or whatsoever, but determined by regulation, so that also employees can rely on the bonus because they need the bonus to pay for holidays or whatever they would like to invest. So there's some kind of stability of payment, relatively stable pay. And if you have low uncertainty avoidance, then it can be more flexible. The company is doing well, you receive much more. You are doing very well, you receive much more. And they are much more open towards performance-based pay. So you can determine your own performance, and there's a lot of flexibility. Another dimension which is very important would be masculinity, or this performance orientation versus quality orientation. If you have a country that is very high on masculinity, very high on performance orientation, what you typically see, it's a lot of competition. So it's based, pay is based on competition and performance. If you do well, then you receive higher pay, more promotion, recognition, and so forth. In countries that are rather low on that, then you offer benefits, but in different kinds. So it can be more of social benefits, more holidays. or could be quality of work-life issues, then maybe some other benefits that would be attractive to employees. I remember also when I worked as a professor in Korea, very much performance-oriented. Whenever we publish a paper, we get cash payment. And then we had a project, a Swedish colleague, Irish colleague, and us in Korea. And we all got cash payments, and the Swedish colleagues, they got teaching relief and extra holidays. Yeah? So they have less work and they can do things they want to do, but no extra cash payment. Yeah? That's also considering different types here of masculinity. So there are different benefits that would be appealing. So here are some of the leading causes, cultural preferences, why certain compensation practices are being implemented and why they are more preferred or successful in certain country contexts. And that's also why some companies, to some extent, modify compensation practices. Because the main objective of the compensation policy and practice is to attract, motivate, and retain people. I think I already mentioned this when introducing the different components of compensation. So there are certain trends in general, and some of it also more country specific. But what we have seen across many different countries, most industrialized nations, would be the emphasis on non-financial benefits. So compensation, financial is important, but that is more taken for granted, but it's more non-financial aspects, such as career development, offering opportunities, support, management team support, not just authoritarian leadership, but also support from the management. And very important nowadays would be flexible schedules and flexible work locations. This work from anywhere. And that's also what many companies offer. Opportunities for advancement may be important, and then also training and development programs, particularly also for employees from less developed countries, because so they can move up and have more opportunities. And some of these aspects, they are not expensive. Management team support, offering some opportunities, flexible schedules, and so forth, they don't cost. They're not increasing the cost for companies, and that's also why it would be wise for many companies, to the extent possible, to make some concessions and offer some kinds of these non-financial compensation aspects, because the cost stays relatively the same, but you can attract and motivate employees, and that's also why many companies embrace that, and why it's also somewhat provocative that some companies such as Tesla, they proclaim there's no flexibility, everyone has to come, this and that. The benefits they gain might be limited, but of course in some jobs you need physical presence, and then there's not much concession possible.